Welcome. Tonight we invite you to rest as we tell a quiet story of discovery. The tale is not hurried nor filled with noise, but soft and patient as the man himself once was. Close your eyes if you wish, breathe deeply, and allow your thoughts to drift as you listen. Our story is about Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, a quiet physicist whose careful work revealed something astonishing. He uncovered a new kind of light, invisible to our eyes, yet powerful enough to see through flesh and bone. These were the X-rays, a discovery that changed medicine and the world forever. This retelling is gentle, shaped for evening hours when the mind longs to slow down. You may listen to learn, or to dream, or perhaps simply to drift into sleep. However you choose to join us tonight, know that you are welcome here. If you enjoy nights like these, consider subscribing so more stories may visit your bedside in evenings to come. And if you wish, share in the comments where you are listening from or when you plan to close your eyes. You may find comfort in knowing others drift with you. So settle in and let us begin. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen was born in March of 1845 in the quiet town of Linnap, Germany. His childhood unfolded in a modest home with cobblestone streets and nearby hills shaping his early view of the world. The rhythm of the seasons and the routines of family life gave him a steady foundation. These surroundings nurtured a boy who preferred observation over noise, a trait that stayed with him throughout his life. As a child, Wilhelm displayed a curious spirit. He loved to sketch the shapes of plants, stones, and tools, filling his notebooks with patient lines. His attention to detail was less about talent than persistence. He was not a prodigy in the usual sense, but he carried a quiet discipline. In the stillness of his youth, he learned to see what others overlooked, a habit that later guided him towards scientific discovery. School, however, proved a struggle. Wilhelm was not an easy student. Teachers found him inattentive, slow to grasp lessons, or too dreamy. He found the rigid drills of early classrooms frustrating and harsh. He preferred to learn in his own way through watching, sketching, and building. His independent nature often clashed with authority, and this conflict would eventually lead him away from his first schools. During his teenage years, Wilhelm was expelled from one school after a misunderstanding. Though he had not done the mischief accused of him, his silence and refusal to name another student cost him his place. The event left a lasting impression. He carried neither bitterness nor rebellion, only a stronger determination to move forward. From that moment, he leaned more fully into quiet resilience, shaping how he met obstacles later in life. After leaving Germany, Wilhelm traveled to Zurich, where his path turned toward engineering. The Polytechnic Institute there welcomed students eager to work with machines, mathematics, and design. For Wilhelm, this was a place where curiosity had room to breathe. He immersed himself in gears, measurements, and drawings, not yet realizing that these studies were preparing him for a future in physics. In Zurich, Wilhelm found that his earlier struggles mattered less. The new environment encouraged independence. Professors valued practical skill as much as formal lessons. He discovered joy in solving mechanical problems and gained confidence in his abilities. His notebooks filled with designs, and he began to see how careful work could build something lasting. Though still unsure of his calling, he was steadily preparing himself. As he grew in Zurich, Wilhelm's focus shifted from engineering toward the deeper mysteries of physics. The questions of light, energy, and matter stirred something that blueprints and machines alone could not satisfy. He wanted to know not only how devices worked, but why the natural world behaved as it did. This transition came gradually, but once begun, it carried him into a lifelong devotion to science. While studying, Wilhelm met Bertha Ludwig, daughter of a professor. Their companionship grew gently, built on patience and mutual respect. In time they married, and she became his steadfast partner. Bertha's warmth and loyalty would support him through long nights of research and moments of doubt. Their quiet life together, though simple, gave Wilhelm a balance between the demands of work and the grounding of love. Friends described Wilhelm as modest, serious, and kind. He had no taste for fame or display. Instead, he was known for careful attention, a willingness to listen, and steady persistence. He carried himself with humility, finding satisfaction not in recognition but in the work itself. This quality, rare even then, would later define how he responded to discoveries that brought him worldwide attention. After completing his studies, Wilhelm began teaching. His early career was not glamorous, yet he approached it with care. He guided students patiently, recalling his own difficulties in school. He sought to encourage rather than discourage, offering clarity where once he had received only harshness. In lecture halls and small classrooms, he began to shape both his voice as a teacher and his path as a scientist. In his first teaching positions, Wilhelm was not yet the figure of history, but a young scholar learning to balance duty and passion. The work was steady but demanding, and he often found himself staying late, revisiting problems or refining lessons. Though resources were limited, he carried a quiet pride in guiding others, believing that the gift of knowledge was worth the hours it required. He moved between roles in different universities, each step giving him more experience. Though he was not considered a brilliant speaker, his students admired his fairness and dedication. He had a gift for demonstrating experiments with clarity, showing rather than telling. His classrooms often carried the smell of chalk and oil lamps, with instruments neatly arranged, reflecting his tidy habits and love of order. Financially, Wilhelm and Bertha lived simply. They did not chase wealth or luxury. Their home was modest, filled with books, sketches, and the quiet rhythm of shared meals. Bertha managed the household with warmth, while Wilhelm devoted himself to study and teaching. This steady life, though plain, gave them both comfort. They preferred it to the turbulence that often followed ambitious careers. In these years, Wilhelm faced challenges of recognition. Unlike some peers who advanced quickly, his path was slower. He was not one to flatter or compete loudly for position. Instead, he relied on the steady accumulation of knowledge, hoping that careful work would speak for itself. Though advancement came with delays, he never lost patience, trusting that persistence would bring its own reward. Despite setbacks, Wilhelm earned respect for his methodical research. His experiments were not rushed, nor were they shaped by the pursuit of fame. He recorded results with precision, repeating trials until satisfied. Colleagues noted that he preferred accuracy over speed, a trait that sometimes slowed him, but also set him apart. This patience would later prove essential in his greatest discovery. Life at home remained a steady anchor. Wilhelm and Bertha had no children of their own, but their bond was strong. Evenings were often quiet, with reading, simple conversation, or walks under the night sky. He drew strength from her presence, while she admired his dedication. Their partnership became the gentle thread that wove through the more demanding patterns of his academic life. As Wilhelm advanced, his reputation grew, not through bold claims, but through quiet reliability. Universities recognized his careful teaching and consistent research. Gradually, he was entrusted with greater responsibilities. Each role built upon the last, forming a slow but steady climb. Though he never sought the spotlight, his diligence ensured that he would be remembered long after louder voices faded. During these early decades, science itself was in transition. Laboratories across Europe were exploring the unseen world of electricity, magnetism, and light. Questions of energy and matter stirred excitement, and even small advances could reshape understanding. Wilhelm, with his careful eye and cautious nature, was drawn to these mysteries. Though still early in his career, he felt the pull of discovery. The world beyond his studies was changing quickly. Industrial growth was reshaping cities, while new machines altered daily life. Steam and steel carried people and ideas farther than before. For Wilhelm, these transformations were a reminder that knowledge could move the world, not only in factories but also in medicine and art. He felt science was more than study. It was service to humanity. Through each move, Wilhelm carried the lessons of his own youth. He never forgot the sting of expulsion or the frustration of rigid classrooms. These memories softened his approach as a teacher and guided his patients in research. What once seemed failures had become quiet strengths. With steady steps, he built the foundation that would one day support a discovery beyond imagining. By his mid-30s, Wilhelm had already lived through a winding journey. From a difficult start in school to the halls of Zurich and beyond, he had grown into a man defined by perseverance. He had not followed a straight path, yet each turn gave him depth. These layers of experience prepared him for the challenges that awaited in the laboratory. He learned that progress was rarely swift. Years of quiet repetition taught him the value of patience. Whether sketching as a child, building as an engineer, or teaching as a professor, he discovered that small steps often carried more weight than sudden leaps. This philosophy became the guiding thread of his work, allowing him to endure when others might falter. Colleagues who met him often remarked on his unassuming nature. He was polite, sometimes stern, but never arrogant. His presence in a room was steady rather than commanding. Students felt safe to ask questions, sensing that he understood the struggle of learning. This humanity, rare in academia, set him apart and created bonds that lasted long beyond the classroom. Bertha remained a central figure in his journey. She managed the difficulties of household life with quiet skill, freeing Wilhelm to focus on his studies. Her letters to family spoke of long hours, yet also of pride in his devotion. The partnership between them was not dramatic, but enduring, a constant source of comfort that grounded him through each challenge. Though Wilhelm moved often for work, he carried a love for simple pleasures. He enjoyed walking outdoors, observing landscapes and seasonal change. These walks refreshed his mind, giving him clarity before returning to his instruments and notes. Nature, in its calm cycles, mirrored his own patient approach to science. In quiet hills and shaded paths, he found balance. At times, he doubted whether his efforts would amount to anything lasting. Many scholars pursued recognition, publishing widely or promoting themselves with ease. Wilhelm, by contrast, hesitated to speak of his work until certain. Though this modesty slowed his rise, it also built trust among peers. What he shared was never rushed, and this reliability earned him steady respect. By the late 1870s, Wilhelm was no longer a struggling student, but a recognized figure in his field. His name carried weight, not for grand discoveries, but for a reputation of careful teaching and consistent results. He had built a life marked by steadiness, discipline, and humility. These qualities, though quiet, prepared him for the moment when chance and persistence would meet. His early struggles were not wasted years, but essential foundations. The boy who once sketched stones and plants had become a man who observed nature with even greater patience. The young student, expelled for silence, had become the teacher known for fairness. Each trial had shaped him, turning what seemed weakness into quiet strength. Wilhelm stood on the threshold of a new chapter. He did not yet know it, but the habits formed in childhood and the lessons carried through youth were about to serve him in extraordinary ways. The next phase of his life would not simply build upon his past, it would transform the world's understanding of the unseen. Thus ended the first stage of Wilhelm Röntgen's journey, from a boy in Germany to a man in Zurich, from setbacks to steady progress. He had become a figure shaped by patience, humility, and devotion. These early years were not marked by fame, yet they held the seeds of discovery. Soon, his careful path would lead to light hidden within shadows. By the mid-1880s, Wilhelm had accepted a post at the University of Würzburg. The city itself was quiet, its stone buildings and winding streets echoing with history. For Wilhelm, the university was both a duty and a sanctuary. Here he could teach with patience while carving out time for research. Though not a man of many words, his steady presence earned him respect among colleagues. As a professor, Wilhelm valued fairness above all. He recalled the hardships of his own youth and sought to spare his students that pain. His lectures were clear, his tone calm, and he avoided sharp criticism. Instead, he guided gently, allowing curiosity to take root. Students often left his classes not dazzled by brilliance, but steady with understanding. It was this trust that made him quietly beloved. Daily life at the university was orderly. Morning hours belonged to lectures, while afternoons brought meetings, papers, and correspondence. The true heart of Wilhelm's day began later, when the halls grew quiet and the sun set. It was in the hushed evenings that he retreated to his laboratory, leaving the bustle of academic duty behind to immerse himself in quiet experiments. The Labo RATORY in Würzburg was not grand, but it was well tended. Wooden tables held polished instruments, glass jars, and carefully wound coils of wire. Shelves lined with notebooks bore the marks of steady use. Lamps glowed softly, their light reflecting off glass tubes. It was a space shaped by discipline, yet alive with curiosity. For Wilhelm, this room became a second home. Those who entered his lab often remarked on its atmosphere. It was neither chaotic nor intimidating, but calm and precise. Assistants followed his lead, arranging tools with care and recording details faithfully. Even when experiments failed, the mood remained steady. Wilhelm's presence carried patience, and under that quiet influence, the lab became a place where discovery felt possible. At night, the laboratory shifted into something almost dreamlike. Shadows danced across walls, cast by flickering lamps. The air carried a faint smell of oil and warm glass. The quiet hum of equipment replaced the noise of the day. In those hours, Wilhelm's world shrank to the glow of instruments and the scratch of pen on paper, a rhythm as steady as breathing. Central to his work were the cathode ray tubes, fragile glass cylinders sealed with care. Inside, when connected to electricity, streams of invisible particles leaped forward. To most, these tubes were curiosities, useful for demonstrations, but little more. To Wilhelm, they hinted at mysteries beneath the surface, forces unseen, yet waiting to be understood. Their faint glow filled him with wonder. Cathode rays were difficult to study. The tubes were delicate, easily broken. Pumps were needed to draw out air, and wires had to be handled with care. Even so, Wilhelm found himself drawn to them. He did not chase wild claims, but instead repeated experiments slowly, recording changes with patience. Each trial revealed small hints of nature's secrets, pieces of a larger puzzle. His notebooks grew thick with diagrams and notes. Lines traced the shape of tubes, sparks, and faint shadows. Numbers filled margins, precise yet humble. There was no sense of rush, only steady effort. Wilhelm believed that repetition was the true test of knowledge. By walking the same path again and again, he trusted that clarity would emerge from the fog of mystery. Some evenings stretched late into the night. The university grew silent, the city outside hushed in sleep, while Wilhelm remained at his table. His lamp cast a warm circle of light across the pages, while fragile tubes glowed faintly in the dark. Though he did not yet realize it, he was drawing closer with each quiet trial to a discovery that would illuminate the world. The tools of the laboratory were simple by modern standards, yet they held deep promise. Glass tubes, metal coils, and wooden stands lined the benches. Every piece was handled with care, for a single crack or flaw could ruin an experiment. Wilhelm treated each object with respect, as though even the smallest wire carried within it the potential to reveal nature's hidden laws. Electricity fascinated him most of all. In the dim glow of the lab, sparks snapped softly, casting tiny flashes across the glass. To some, it was a novelty. To Wilhelm, it was a doorway. He sensed that these unseen currents held secrets, and he devoted long hours to studying their behavior. Each flicker of light promised a deeper truth waiting in the shadows. He often worked alone, though students and assistants came and went. They admired his patience, but many could not match the long hours he endured. As night deepened, one by one they left, until Wilhelm remained as the only figure in the room. The quiet did not trouble him. In solitude, his concentration deepened, and the world beyond the lab seemed to fade away. The cathode ray tubes themselves were fragile marvels. Made of blown glass and sealed with wax, they required careful handling. Once the air inside was pumped thin, the electric glow would spread in curious patterns. Some rays seemed to cast faint shadows, though no one yet understood why. Wilhelm's eyes lingered on these shapes, storing the puzzle quietly in his mind. Each trial was written down with care. Wilhelm did not rush from one idea to the next. Instead, he filled page after page with sketches of what he saw, repeating tests to confirm results. He did not mind long hours or slow progress. In the steady rhythm of repetition, he found calm. Where others saw tedium, Wilhelm discovered peace and direction. The room around him often seemed more alive than still. Glass tubes glowed faintly, casting green and violet light across the walls. Shadows stretched and shifted as wires warmed. The hum of the pump, the click of switches, the faint crackle of current created a quiet music. For Wilhelm, this atmosphere was not tiresome but comforting, the sound of possibility unfolding. Even the failures carried meaning. Tubes that cracked or refused to glow were not losses but lessons. He examined them carefully, adjusting wires, changing voltages, trying again. Each small change, each adjustment brought new insight. Though progress was slow, Wilhelm trusted the process. He knew that truth rarely revealed itself at once, but instead whispered through persistence. Late nights left their mark, yet Wilhelm bore them calmly. His hair grew silver at the edges, his eyes lined with fatigue, but he pressed on. Bertha understood his devotion and rarely complained. She would sometimes bring a warm meal or sit nearby, keeping silent company while he worked. Her quiet support made the lonely hours lighter. In the glow of the lab, Wilhelm began to notice patterns. Shadows behaved oddly. Rays seemed to pass through thin barriers, leaving traces where none were expected. These were not yet answers, only hints, but they stirred his curiosity. Something invisible was at play, something that resisted the usual explanations. He leaned in closer, determined to listen. By now, the laboratory had become more than a workplace. It was a world of its own, where nights stretched long and discoveries flickered just out of reach. Outside, the city slept, but inside, Wilhelm's quiet patience moved him closer to an unseen truth. Step by step, note by note, he was building the path that would soon open into wonder. To understand his work, one must picture the cathode ray tube itself. It was a glass cylinder, sealed tight, with wires entering each end. When electricity passed through, a pale glow appeared, tracing shapes against the glass. These rays could not be seen directly, only their effects. For Wilhelm, these faint glimmers were like voices, speaking in a hidden language. The tubes required a vacuum, air drawn out until little remained. This made the rays travel more freely, glowing in colors that seemed almost otherworldly. Each tube was handcrafted, no two quite alike. Wilhelm tested them with care, adjusting wires and measuring currents. His notes showed the same scenes repeated again and again, each trial deepening his understanding. Electricity in those days was still a wonder. Wires sparked, lamps glowed, and coils hummed with power. Many saw only its practical uses, but Wilhelm sensed more. He treated it not as a servant, but as a mystery. In the delicate tubes, its hidden nature revealed glimpses of something beyond the ordinary senses, inviting him to listen with patience. Even the smallest effects held his attention. A faint shadow where none should be, a glow that persisted longer than expected, a line that curved slightly differently from before. Each detail mattered, for Wilhelm believed nature wasted nothing. Where others might have dismissed such signs, he paused and took note, slowly piecing together a puzzle still hidden in plain sight. His laboratory became a place of waiting. Some nights passed with little progress, only the hum of the pump and the scratch of pen on paper. Yet Wilhelm did not despair. He trusted that persistence itself was a form of discovery, that each failure cleared a path. In the silence of those long evenings, he was learning to see the unseen. Small curiosities began to gather. He noticed that rays seemed able to affect objects placed nearby, even when hidden from sight. This was not expected. Shadows appeared on screens, faint outlines where no light should reach. The patterns were subtle, but they tugged at his attention. He wondered if something unknown was passing through the barriers, leaving silent marks. The idea fascinated him. Could there be rays beyond the visible, invisible forces moving quietly through matter? Wilhelm approached the question with caution. He did not rush to declare it, nor did he ignore it. Instead, he tested carefully, placing barriers between tube and screen, watching the effects, repeating the trials until his notes overflowed with careful lines. The shadows grew more convincing with each attempt. They were not illusions, nor tricks of light. Even when covered, the screen glowed faintly, responding to something his eyes could not see. Wilhelm felt a stirring of excitement, though he concealed it beneath his usual calm. Discovery, he knew, was not a sudden spark, but a steady flame built over time. In these moments, the laboratory felt alive with possibility. The glow of the tubes, the shifting shadows, the quiet air charged with unseen energy, all seemed to suggest a hidden world just beyond reach. Wilhelm leaned closer, his steady hands guiding each trial. Though he did not yet grasp the full meaning, he sensed that something extraordinary waited in the darkness. Thus the stage was set. Wilhelm, the quiet professor who once struggled in school, now stood on the threshold of discovery. His patience, his long hours, and his devotion had carried him here. In the stillness of the Würzburg laboratory, the unseen forces of the world were preparing to reveal themselves, and Wilhelm was ready to listen. Night after night, Wilhelm returned to the lab. The quiet space became an extension of his own mind, ordered yet filled with mystery. Each tube he tested, each note he recorded, added another piece to the puzzle. Though he could not yet name it, he felt a presence beyond the glass, a quiet force waiting to step forward into the light of understanding. He began shielding the tubes with cardboard, testing whether the rays could pass through. To his surprise, the screen beyond still flickered faintly. Something unseen was moving outward, ignoring the barriers. This effect unsettled and intrigued him in equal measure. If true, it suggested that nature held more secrets than even the boldest theories had imagined. At first he doubted his own senses. Could it be a trick of reflection or a flaw in the glass? Wilhelm repeated the trials again and again, each time finding the same faint glow. Slowly, certainty grew. It was no illusion. Something unknown was leaving its mark. The patient notes in his journal began to hint at a discovery larger than himself. The air in the lab seemed charged with anticipation. Even the silence carried weight, as though the unseen rays had filled the room with their presence. Shadows behaved strangely, outlines appearing where no lamp shone. Each result deepened the mystery. Wilhelm pressed on, certain that he was tracing the edges of something new, though he could not yet define it. Assistants who witnessed the trials were puzzled, but Wilhelm remained calm. He discouraged speculation, preferring patience over excitement. To him, science demanded humility. He would not claim more than he could prove. Instead, he collected data carefully, ensuring that when the time came, his findings would be undeniable. For now, the mystery remained a quiet secret between him and his notes. The experiments consumed his nights. Hours slipped by, unnoticed, as he adjusted wires, checked screens, and recorded results. Bertha sometimes found him in the early morning, still bent over his desk, eyes weary but steady. Though concerned, she respected his devotion. Their home life remained a quiet anchor, even as Wilhelm's thoughts drifted deeper into the unknown. He noticed that even thick books and wooden boards could not stop the rays. The glow persisted, faint but steady, as though the invisible force moved through solid matter with ease. This realization unsettled him. If true, it meant that the world was more porous than anyone had imagined. What else might these rays pass through, and what images might they leave? The laboratory grew into a place of hushed wonder. Each trial revealed new hints, new shapes in shadow, new glimmers beyond barriers. Wilhelm moved carefully, always cautious, always methodical. Yet, in his heart, he knew he stood close to something immense. The rays, though still unnamed, were slowly revealing themselves through the quiet patience of his work. As the year neared its end, the tension in the laboratory deepened. Notes piled high, screens glowed faintly, and the shadows no longer felt ordinary. Wilhelm sensed that he was standing at the threshold of discovery. He did not rush, for he knew that one careless claim could undo years of trust. Instead, he prepared himself for the moment to come. Thus, Wilhelm remained alone in his laboratory, surrounded by the faint glow of unseen forces. His life of patience and quiet study had led him here to the edge of revelation. The world beyond Würzburg slept, unaware. Within those walls, however, history itself was stirring. Soon, the discovery would step from shadows into light. On a November evening in 1895, Wilhelm worked alone in the Würzburg lab. He had covered a cathode ray tube with cardboard to block the glow, yet something unexpected occurred. Across the room, a small screen painted with barium platinocyanide shimmered faintly. No lamp touched it, no spark should have reached it, yet the surface glowed softly in the dark. He paused, uncertain. To test, he moved the screen farther away. Still, the glow returned whenever the tube was active. Even with layers of cardboard in place, the effect persisted. Something unseen was leaving the tube, traveling invisibly through space and striking the screen. Wilhelm felt a quiet thrill, tempered by caution, for he knew such mysteries demanded patience. The glow was faint, but steady. It did not behave like ordinary light, nor like the cathode rays confined within glass. This was something new. Wilhelm repeated the trial, shielding the tube in different ways, yet always the screen responded. The unseen force seemed to move easily through barriers, ignoring coverings as though they were no more than mist. His first instinct was doubt. Could it be a reflection, some trick of the tube? Kay tried again and again, adjusting wires, changing angles, repeating each step. Yet the glow returned faithfully each time. Slowly, certainty replaced hesitation. Something real was present, something that no theory had yet explained. A quiet sense of discovery stirred in the silent room. He carried the screen to different corners of the laboratory. Wherever the covered tube was active, the surface glowed faintly. When the current stopped, the light vanished. He repeated the cycle until convinced that no accident could explain it. Whatever these rays were, they traveled outward, unseen by the eye, yet leaving undeniable signs upon the waiting screen. Curiosity drove him to test shadows. He placed the thin sheet of cardboard between tube and screen. The glow dimmed slightly, but still persisted. When he tried thicker barriers, the effect weakened, yet did not vanish. He placed a metal key upon the screen, and its outline appeared as a sharp shadow. Something invisible was shaping light when no lamp shone. Fascinated, Wilhelm began gathering more objects. He set wood, glass, and metal before the screen, each leaving a different mark. Thin materials let the mysterious rays pass easily, while denser objects cast dark silhouettes. The shadows revealed a strange truth. These rays could penetrate matter, slipping through the familiar world as though it were transparent in their presence. Hour after hour, he tested new arrangements. He traced outlines of coins, rings, and tools, watching how their shapes appeared on the glowing screen. The results were clear, undeniable. The rays did not belong to ordinary light. They moved silently through barriers, yet carried with them the ability to sketch hidden forms. The laboratory, once familiar, felt transformed by mystery. Despite his excitement, Wilhelm remained calm, methodical. He filled his notebook with sketches and numbers, refusing to rush. He had learned long ago that science required restraint, that early conclusions could mislead. Yet, in his heart, he felt awe. Each shadow was a whisper of the unseen world, hinting at forces that had always been there, waiting for discovery. The laboratory glowed with faint light, shadows shifting with every trial. Wilhelm moved carefully among his instruments, a quiet figure guided by patience. The discovery was no longer chance, but fact. He had found a new kind of ray, invisible yet powerful. Though he had not yet named it, he sensed that this hidden light would one day reach far beyond his small room. Wilhelm dimmed the lamps further, letting the room fall into deeper shadow. Against the darkness, the glowing screen seemed almost alive. Each time he placed an object before it, the rays revealed outlines unseen by the eye. Keys, rings, and bits of wood all left their marks. It was as if the laboratory itself had become a chamber of quiet phantoms. He noted how different materials behaved. Thin wood hardly stopped the rays at all, while sheets of lead created strong, dark shadows. Paper offered no resistance, yet coins left bold outlines. Each result was carefully written into his notebook. Wilhelm did not hurry. The process of steady observation, repeated patiently, was his trusted path to truth. His experiments grew more daring. He placed thicker books between tube and screens. To his surprise, the glow persisted faintly, as though the rays slipped through the pages without effort. Metal, however, remained firm in blocking them. This strange balance fascinated him. It seemed the unseen rays could weave through matter selectively, choosing paths that ordinary light could never cross. He carried the screen to greater distances, even into adjoining rooms. Each time the mysterious glow followed, though weaker with space. The invisible force was not bound tightly to the tube, but spread outward, reaching silently into the dark. Wilhelm sensed the importance of this reach, though he kept his excitement measured, recording every step with quiet discipline. To test further, he placed his hand briefly between screen and tube. A faint shadow appeared, not of skin but of bones. The sight unsettled him, though he quickly replaced it with more familiar objects. He knew the moment was significant. Yet he hesitated to push too far alone. Instead, he prepared carefully for the next stage of testing. In December, Wilhelm invited Bertha to join him in the laboratory. She had long supported his work with quiet patience, though she rarely entered his world of wires and glass. On this night, he asked her to place her hand upon a photographic plate with a glowing screen nearby. She agreed, trusting his calm assurance, though curious about the result. The exposure lasted several minutes. The room silent but for the hum of equipment. Bertha sat still, her hand resting patiently. When at last the plate was developed, both stared in wonder. Upon its surface appeared the image of her hand, the bones within clearly visible, her wedding ring shining as a pale circle. It was both eerie and beautiful. Bertha, though startled, spoke softly. Seeing her own skeleton unsettled her, and she murmured that she felt she had glimpsed her own death. Wilhelm held the plate carefully, humbled by its strange power. He did not rejoice loudly, nor seek praise. Instead, he recorded the moment with solemnity, aware that such knowledge carried both promise and burden. The image of Bertha's hand became the first true X-ray photograph. To Wilhelm, it was not a trophy, but a testament. He saw in it not only bones and rings, but the vast potential of a new science. Medicine, physics, and daily life might all be changed by what these rays revealed. Yet he approached the vision with humility. Night settled deeper over Würzburg as Wilhelm placed the plate aside. He sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had carried him here. From sketching stones in childhood to this image of hidden bones, his life had been shaped by patience. The discovery was not his alone, but a gift from nature revealed through persistence. He resolved to honor it with care. With Bertha's hand recorded on glass, Wilhelm turned his attention to documenting the phenomenon. He knew that the world would require careful proof. Each experiment had to be repeated, measured, and recorded without doubt. For weeks he worked in near secrecy, guarding the discovery until he was sure. His notebooks filled with drawings, numbers, and patient observations. He tested metals, minerals, and even small animals, each leaving images that revealed hidden forms. Bones, coins, and wires all appeared in ghostly contrast. The rays seemed to pass through flesh while pausing at denser matter. It was a startling truth, but Wilhelm wrote of it calmly. His tone was never sensational, only measured, as though inviting others to witness. In time, he drafted a formal paper. He titled it simply On a New Kind of Rays. The name carried humility, describing only what was known. X, in mathematics, stood for the unknown, and so he gave these mysterious rays a name that reflected caution rather than certainty. It was not a proclamation, but an invitation to explore further. The paper was concise, filled with diagrams and photographic plates. It detailed each experiment, from glowing screens to shadows on film. Wilhelm refrained from speculation, focusing only on what had been observed. His restraint was deliberate. He wanted his colleagues to judge the evidence without distraction, to see clearly what the new rays revealed. In December of 1895, he sent the paper to the Physical Medical Society of Würzburg. He included photographs, among them Bertha's hand. The image, stark and strange, drew immediate attention. For the first time, people looked upon the hidden framework of the body. The response was quiet at first, but beneath the surface, the world was beginning to stir with wonder. Colleagues who saw the paper were struck by its clarity. The evidence was undeniable. Shadows of bones and objects spoke more loudly than words. Skeptics found little room for dismissal. Even those who doubted at first grew silent before the photographic plates. Wilhelm's careful work had spoken for itself, steady and undeniable as the rays themselves. News spread quickly beyond Würzburg. Scholars and physicians repeated his experiments with success. Laboratories across Europe lit their own cathode ray tubes and produced similar images. The discovery was not confined to one man's lab. It was real, universal, and available to all who cared to see. The mystery of the unseen rays was becoming a worldwide revelation. Despite the excitement, Wilhelm remained modest. He continued his teaching duties, appearing unchanged to his students. He did not boast of his discovery or seek wealth. When visitors came to see the experiments, he welcomed them with courtesy but little flourish. His quiet demeanor gave the rays even greater weight, for they needed no embellishment to command awe. Bertha watched as their quiet life filled with new attention. Letters arrived, requests for lectures grew, and newspapers carried reports of the mysterious rays. She remained his anchor, reminding him of the simple life they valued. Wilhelm, though aware of the growing fame, stayed rooted in his calm nature. He belonged not to glory, but to the work itself. By the close of 1895, the discovery was secure. The paper, the photographs, and the repeated experiments left no doubt. A new kind of ray had been found, invisible yet powerful, destined to reshape medicine and science. In the quiet of his laboratory, Wilhelm reflected with humility. He had opened a door, but it was nature, not ambition, that revealed the path. As the year turned, the strange images continued to circulate. Physicians marveled at the ability to see bones without cutting the skin. Scholars debated what these rays might truly be. Wilhelm read their reactions quietly, noting their excitement but keeping his own voice calm. To him, the rays were not trophies, but gifts, entrusted to careful hands. He resisted dramatic claims. Instead, he spoke simply, describing only what he had tested. This humility puzzled some, for they expected declarations of triumph. But Wilhelm felt that the discovery was larger than himself. His role was to observe faithfully, to record with honesty, and to let others decide how the new rays might serve the world. The name he chose, X-rays, captured the spirit of the unknown. It was a symbol of caution, a reminder that science was always in search of clarity. By leaving the X, Wilhelm allowed others to explore, to question, to define. In time, the name would remain, but the sense of mystery it carried would never fade completely. Newspapers quickly found the story irresistible. Headlines spoke of invisible light that could see through flesh and wood. Some accounts grew fanciful, imagining rays that might read secrets or reveal hidden thoughts. Wilhelm, reading such exaggerations, only shook his head. He trusted the science, not the speculation, and stayed focused on the steady truth of his experiments. In his laboratory, he continued to refine the work. Each plate was developed with care, each note written with precision. Visitors came often, eager to glimpse the new rays, and left astonished. For Wilhelm, the greatest satisfaction was not their praise, but the confirmation that the discovery was real, reproducible, and already beginning to change how the world looked at itself. Doctors were among the first to imagine uses. Broken bones could be seen without surgery, bullets could be located inside wounds, hidden fractures revealed. The promise of healing filled the minds of physicians. Wilhelm, though not a doctor, felt a quiet joy at the thought that his work might ease suffering, that science could serve life so directly. Still, he remained cautious. He warned that the rays were new, their properties not yet fully understood. Long exposures, he noted, could irritate the skin. He urged patience in exploring their use, reminding others that nature often revealed both gifts and dangers together. His careful voice sought balance, even as enthusiasm rushed forward. Nights in Würzburg carried a different weight now. The laboratory that once held only shadows and silence now seemed alive with a quiet glow of history. Each instrument, each plate, had played a part in revealing something unseen. Wilhelm walked among them with humility, aware that the path he had taken was only the beginning of a much longer journey. Bertha, ever at his side, watched the changes unfold. Their once quiet life now stood in the gaze of the world, yet at home their routines remained steady. She kept the household simple, grounding Wilhelm in ordinary comforts. Her presence reminded him that discoveries might reach far, but the heart found rest in stillness and shared devotion. Wilhelm continued forward with patience, teaching, researching, and refining what he had found. The rays, unseen yet undeniable, had stepped into the light of human knowledge. He did not see them as his alone, but as part of nature's vast gift to humankind. With humility, he carried the work onward, leaving the world forever changed by a glow in the dark. To understand the rays, Wilhelm began with patience. Ordinary light, the kind that fills rooms and warms mornings, travels in waves our eyes can see. These new rays, however, moved silently beyond sight. They carried energy, but their glow was hidden, reaching places that light could not. To describe them required calm words, for their nature was delicate and strange. Imagine light passing through a window. The glass bends and slows it, yet it still shines through. These new rays behaved differently. They did not pause at glass or paper. Instead, they drifted onward as though barriers were thin mist. They revealed a secret, that much of the world, though solid to us, was not so solid to them. Unlike sunlight, which paints the world in color, these rays left no hues. They carried no brightness the eye could sense. Instead, they moved invisibly, their presence known only by the marks they left. Where ordinary light revealed surfaces, the new rays whispered of interiors, showing the hidden structures within familiar things. Wilhelm explained gently that these rays were neither spirits nor magic. They were part of nature, behaving with quiet consistency. Just as rain falls, just as shadows stretch, so to these rays followed rules. They slipped silently through cloth, wood, and flesh, while bones and metal held them back, casting outlines that ordinary sight could never reveal. To imagine their path, one might picture a breeze moving through branches. Thin leaves bend aside, letting the air flow past, but solid trunks hold firm, shaping currents around them. In the same way, the rays moved easily through soft matter, yet bones and denser objects created shadows, marking their presence on waiting screens and plates. When Wilhelm spoke of the rays, he used simple comparisons. He described them as a hidden kind of light, softer and more penetrating. They were not to be feared, only understood with care. Their mystery lay not in defiance of nature, but in extending it, revealing what had always been there, silent and unseen, until patient eyes observed them. He showed how even thick books or layers of cloth did not stop the rays entirely. To many, this was unsettling. To Wilhelm, it was beautiful, a reminder that the world held more layers than the senses revealed. The unseen was not empty, but full of quiet movement, each ray carrying with it the promise of knowledge. Ordinary light spreads color, making flowers bright or skies blue. The new rays carried no such gift. Instead, they drew shadows of hidden things, images of the unseen. Where the eye saw flesh, the rays revealed bone. Where the eye saw wood, they traced the nail inside. They were not substitutes for vision, but companions, expanding what sight could know. Wilhelm often explained the rays with calm precision, careful not to claim more than he knew. Their behavior was consistent, yet their full nature remained a mystery. He preferred honesty, describing them as part of nature's wide fabric, woven in threads too fine for ordinary senses. Their beauty, he said, was in their quiet truth. Thus the rays, invisible yet steady, became known as a bridge between seen and unseen. They carried no color, no brightness, but they revealed form where none should be visible. Through them, the hidden interior of the world began to speak. Softly at first, but with words strong enough to change how humankind would forever look upon itself. When Wilhelm placed thin sheets of paper before the rays, they passed through as if nothing were there. The screen beyond glowed faintly, unchanged. Cloth, too, offered little resistance. It was as though soft materials had no weight to the rays, no more hindrance than fog to sunlight. The unseen force slipped quietly through, unbothered by surface layers. Glass, which bends and shapes ordinary light, also failed to stop them. Windows that blocked the view of a room could not hide from these rays. They moved silently onward, their path unchanged. It was a strange reversal. What seemed solid and protective to the eye was almost transparent to the rays, which revealed that the world held many different truths. Wood, though thicker than paper, allowed the rays to continue. Books, with their many pages, still glowed faintly when the rays struck beyond them. Wilhelm marveled at this quiet power. The rays were not forceful, not loud, yet they slipped through matter with ease, carrying their presence past barriers that once seemed firm and impenetrable. Metal behaved differently. Even thin sheets of lead cast dark, sharp shadows. Coins placed upon the screen blocked the rays completely, their outlines crisp against the glow. It was here that Wilhelm saw the contrast most clearly. Where paper and wood yielded, metal held firm. The rays, though strange and new, obeyed rules as consistent as any in nature. Bone shared this firmness. When a hand rested between the rays and the screen, the soft flesh appeared transparent, while the bones within showed darkly. It was a startling sight, both eerie and wondrous. Flesh seemed fragile before the rays, yet bones stood strong, casting shadows that revealed the hidden framework of life itself. He explained this gently to others, comparing the rays to water flowing through a forest. The thin leaves and branches offered little resistance, but the trunks created strong patterns in the stream. In the same way, the rays slipped through skin and soft matter. Yet bones and metal shaped their passage, leaving imprints of their presence behind. Each experiment deepened the pattern. Coins, rings, and nails cast dark silhouettes, while fabric and paper barely showed. The rays seemed to carry their own quiet map of the world, separating dense from delicate. This hidden vision unsettled some, but Wilhelm saw it as a reminder of nature's balance, revealing inner strength where the eye saw only surface. To describe it for students, he often used the word shadow. Just as sunlight creates shapes upon a wall, these rays created shadows upon the screen. But where sunlight traced only outlines, the new rays revealed inner forms. They gave shadow a depth that had never held before, layering surface and structure into one ghostly image. The images were faint, never bright or colorful. They appeared quietly, pale and grey against the glow of the screen. Yet within their soft outlines lay hidden truths. A key showed its teeth, a hand revealed its bones, a box displayed its nails within. These were shadows, not of surface, but of essence, patiently revealed by the passing rays. Wilhelm remained careful in his words. He described the rays as penetrating but never magical. Their power lay not in mystery alone, but in the steady way they obeyed nature's rules. Each material, each object, gave its own response. Together they formed a new language, silent but visible, teaching humankind that the unseen world could be made known. Wilhelm soon discovered that the rays could leave lasting marks, not only glowing on screens, but imprinting themselves upon photographic plates. These plates, coated with light-sensitive chemicals, had long been used to capture ordinary images. Now they recorded something new. Invisible rays passed through objects and left behind ghostly outlines, preserved for the eye to study long after the moment had passed. The process was slow. After exposure, the plate was placed into trays of liquid washed with chemicals and bathed in water. At first it seemed blank, but gradually, as though waking from sleep, faint shapes appeared. Shadows deepened, rings brightened, and bones emerged. Watching an image form was like watching mist gather into a figure before dawn. When Bertha's hand first appeared upon a plate, it carried both wonder and unease. Her wedding ring gleamed in the pale image, while bones stretched like delicate branches beneath. To Wilhelm, the sight was not terrifying but humbling. It revealed the hidden structure of life, reminding him that even the most familiar body held mysteries unseen until now. Other objects followed. Keys revealed their ridges, coins their engravings, tools their hidden joints. The plates captured these with a precision that startled observers. What had once required dissection or cutting could now be seen without harm. The images were silent, monochrome, but their truth carried more weight than any color photograph could ever hold. Wilhelm explained the process gently, showing how exposure and development brought hidden forms to light. He spoke not of miracles, but of chemistry and patience. The plates, sensitive to rays invisible to the eye, became a bridge between the unseen and the known. Each ghostly image whispered of nature's hidden order, written softly upon glass. The images carried an air of dream. They were not sharp in the way sunlight photographs could be. Instead, they appeared as pale veils, shadows layered upon shadows. Yet, within their quiet outlines, one could see what had always been concealed. Flesh yielded, bones stood firm, and metal shone as clear as stone. The unseen world had become visible. Physicians who saw these plates were filled with awe. A broken bone could be seen without cutting, a lodged bullet could be found without probing. The possibilities for healing seemed endless. Wilhelm, though not a physician himself, felt a deep sense of responsibility. His discovery might ease suffering, yet it must be handled with care and respect. In the dim glow of the lab, plates dried upon racks, each one holding a fragment of hidden truth. To Wilhelm, they were not trophies, but records, pieces of evidence gathered patiently. He did not rush to show them to the world. He preferred to let the rays speak for themselves, steady and undeniable, etched quietly into glass. The world, however, was eager. Once the first plates were shown, their power was undeniable. People gazed at bones, coins, and hidden structures with wonder. Some felt unease, as though privacy itself had been pierced. Yet many more felt hope, for here was a tool that could save lives. The pale shadows promised knowledge without pain. Each plate carried a gentle reminder. Nature reveals itself slowly. The rays did not dazzle with color or brightness. They offered no spectacle, only quiet truth. By passing through barriers, they unveiled what had always been there, unseen, until patience and care brought it forward. In these ghostly photographs, Wilhelm saw the beauty of hidden worlds made clear. The first collections of X-ray plates spread quietly among colleagues. Each carried the same pale, haunting beauty. Bones crossed with rings, coins pressed against wood, and tools hidden inside boxers were all revealed. These pictures were not works of art, yet they held a strange grace. They showed the hidden order of the world with calm, undeniable clarity. Observers often gasped when they saw their own hands recorded. The familiar flesh became transparent, leaving a delicate lattice of bones beneath. Some felt awe, others unease, as if glimpsing something forbidden. Wilhelm himself remained steady. To him, these were not symbols of fear, but lessons. The rays only revealed what had always been there, unseen until now. The images spread across Europe with astonishing speed. Within weeks, laboratories repeated the experiments, producing their own plates. The discovery could not be contained. In this, Wilhelm felt a quiet joy, for science was never meant to belong to one person. Knowledge, once uncovered, belonged to all, a gift from nature entrusted to the hands of humankind. Each photograph became a doorway. Through it, the unseen world stepped gently into view. The rays could not be touched, nor smelled, nor heard, yet their presence was recorded with quiet certainty. They reminded the world that reality was always deeper than what eyes alone could know. Wilhelm saw in them not strangeness, but a new layer of truth. Yet, even as wonder spread, Wilhelm remained cautious. He noticed that long exposure sometimes irritated the skin, leaving redness behind. Though minor, it suggested that the rays carried effects beyond simple images. He warned quietly that they should be used with care, reminding his peers that every gift of nature came with balance, both promise and risk. The caution was not alarmist, but gentle. Wilhelm knew that excitement could blind as much as ignorance. He reminded others that patience was the first duty of science. Just as fire gave warmth, but could burn, these rays offered vision, but might also carry harm. To study them wisely required both curiosity and restraint. He advised moderation in demonstrations, keeping exposures brief. His own experiments were carried out with care, never prolonged for spectacle. He valued truth more than performance, and he hoped others would treat the discovery with the same respect. The rays, he said, should serve humanity, not entertain it. Their gift was too precious for careless use. Still, fascination grew. Doctors pressed to use the rays in hospitals. Engineers wondered about hidden flaws in machines, and ordinary people marveled at the thought of seeing beneath surfaces. Wilhelm watched all this with humility. The discovery had already slipped beyond his quiet lab, carried into the wide world where it would take on a life of its own. In moments of reflection, he felt both pride and concern. Pride that his patient work had revealed something so profound. Concern that its power might be misused before it was fully understood. His answer, as always, was not to control, but to teach. Knowledge, carefully shared, was the best safeguard. In calm explanation lay the truest protection. So the photographs became both proof and warning. They displayed the hidden strength of bone, the delicate form of hands, the hard outline of rings and tools. At the same time, they whispered that nature's gifts must be handled with care. Wilhelm carried this balance quietly, a man steady between awe and caution, guiding the rays into human understanding. As more scientists repeated the work, Wilhelm's quiet warnings sometimes went unheard. The excitement of seeing bones and hidden objects outweighed patience. Long exposures were tried, demonstrations stretched, and skin reddened. Wilhelm reminded them gently that these rays, like all forces of nature, carried strength. Discovery, he believed, required respect as much as curiosity. He often compared the rays to fire. Fire could warm homes, cook meals, and light the night. Yet, without care, it could also destroy. The new rays were no different. They revealed wonders unseen, yet they also touched the body in ways not fully known. His voice urged caution, a soft reminder amid the rush of wonder. In his own work, Wilhelm remained measured. He limited exposures, tested with precision, and kept his notes orderly. He had no interest in spectacle. To him, the true marvel lay in the quiet glow of the screen, in the slow emergence of images upon plates. The world might race to explore, but Wilhelm preferred steady steps. Bertha, who had once lent her hand to the first photograph, also carried his caution. She often reminded visitors that the rays were not toys, but instruments of study. Her calm voice matched Wilhelm's, adding warmth to his restraint. Together they formed a balance, guiding those who entered the laboratory to treat discovery with reverence. Though he never sought fame, letters and requests poured in. Scientists from across Europe and America asked for details, plates, and advice. Wilhelm answered carefully, sharing what he knew, but never overstating. His modest replies carried more weight than bold declarations. They reflected his lifelong belief that truth spoke clearest when offered without pride. At the university, his lectures remained simple. Students still saw the same quiet professor, methodical and calm. Few realized they were learning from the man who had opened one of nature's deepest secrets. Wilhelm himself did little to remind them. He preferred to let his teaching speak for itself, as steady and patient as the rays he studied. Late nights in the laboratory continued. The familiar hum of pumps and the faint glow of glass were unchanged, yet the meaning of those nights had deepened. Where once he sought patterns in shadows, now he refined an entire field of knowledge. The laboratory had become not only a place of trial, but the birthplace of a new way of seeing. He sometimes paused to reflect on how far he had come. The boy expelled from school, the young man sketching stones, the professor quietly repeating experiments. Each stage had shaped him for this. What once seemed failure had become foundation. He understood now that patience had been his greatest strength, carrying him to the threshold of discovery. The rays, though invisible, had become a light within his life. They connected his persistence, his love of order, and his humility into a single truth, that nature reveals itself to those who listen quietly. Wilhelm felt no need to claim greatness, was content to be a witness, a careful observer chosen by chance and diligence. Others celebrated loudly, but Wilhelm's joy was quiet. He did not see the rays as his possession. They belonged to the world, to medicine, to knowledge itself. His role was only to point the way, to open the door so that others might enter. In this humility lay the true grace of his discovery, a legacy shaped by restraint. As weeks passed, more applications appeared. Doctors spoke of diagnosing injuries, engineers of testing machines, artists of strange new visions. The world was beginning to imagine possibilities Wilhelm himself had not considered. He welcomed this growth, though always reminding others to pair imagination with discipline, wonder with care. For Wilhelm, the rays were not only a tool, but a lesson. They showed that truth often lies hidden, waiting beneath the surface. To discover it required patience, not brilliance alone. His life, marked by quiet persistence, reflected the same truth. He saw in the rays a mirror of his own journey, invisible strength revealed only through steady effort. Bertha watched the world's growing fascination with mixed feelings. She was proud of her husband, yet protective of his peace. Their quiet life had been disrupted, but she helped him preserve its rhythm. Even as visitors came and letters multiplied, she kept their home steady, offering the comfort of stillness amid the growing storm of attention. Wilhelm himself remained unchanged. He still enjoyed long walks, still valued quiet evenings, still found satisfaction in the simple order of his work. Fame did not tempt him, nor did wealth. He refused to patent the rays, believing they were nature's gift to all. This decision reflected his deepest principle, that knowledge belonged to everyone. The rays continued to spread across the world, their use multiplying in hospitals and laboratories. Each new image carried the same quiet power, the same ghostly beauty. People marveled at the way the invisible had become visible. For Wilhelm, it was enough to know that his patience had served not only science, but humanity. He sometimes thought back to the moment when the screen first glowed. It had been such a simple sight, a faint shimmer in the dark. From that single glow had unfolded a revolution in vision. It reminded him that history often begins in silence, in unnoticed places, with quiet figures who persist long enough to see what others overlook. Though honors began to gather, Wilhelm kept his attention on the work itself. He had no taste for ceremony. His joy remained in the laboratory, in the slow unfolding of understanding. Others might build their reputations on discovery. Wilhelm preferred to let the rays themselves be the message, silent, steady, and far more eloquent than any speech. The world outside Würzburg was changing quickly. Newspapers spread the news. Doctors experimented with healing, and ordinary people spoke with wonder. Yet within the laboratory, the glow of the tubes and the quiet scratch of Wilhelm's pen remained unchanged. Discovery had altered the world, but his life of patience and humility continued as before. Each night's work seemed now to carry echoes beyond the laboratory walls. The rays had stepped into the wider world, yet Wilhelm still treated them with the same care as on the first night. He never allowed excitement to overtake discipline. He knew that only by guarding knowledge carefully could it grow safely into its fullest promise. So Wilhelm's understanding deepened, steady and calm. The rays had revealed their nature slowly, just as his own life had unfolded step by step. In them he saw both mystery and truth, both gift and caution. The world was now awake to their power, and soon its response would sweep far beyond the quiet halls of Würzburg. The discovery did not remain in Würzburg for long. Within weeks, news spread through scientific circles across Europe. Letters travelled quickly, carrying descriptions of Wilhelm's experiments. Colleagues who read his paper found the results so clear that many immediately set out to repeat them. Soon laboratories from Paris to London glowed with the same faint screens. In France, physicists confirmed the strange shadows with ease. In England, researchers marveled at the clarity of bones recorded upon plates. Across Germany, universities filled their rooms with cathode ray tubes, eager to witness the unseen. The discovery was no longer one man's quiet secret. It had become a shared moment of wonder across nations. By early 1896, the rays had crossed the ocean. In America, newspapers printed stories of ghostly photographs, startling readers with images of hidden bones. Physicians rushed to test the technique in hospitals, setting up makeshift laboratories in wards and clinics. Within months, the rays had leapt from Wilhelm's laboratory into the hands of eager doctors worldwide. Hospitals were among the first to see the true promise. Surgeons who once probed blindly for bullets or fractures now saw them clearly on glass plates. Patients who feared painful operations felt hope. For the first time, the body's hidden injuries could be revealed without harm. The rays offered healing through vision rather than cutting. Doctors marveled at what the plates revealed. Fractures invisible to the eye appeared clearly. Bullets lodged deep within soldiers were traced with accuracy. The relief was immense, for medicine had gained a tool beyond measure. Wilhelm, though not a physician, understood the gift. Quietly, he rejoiced that his discovery could ease suffering. Still, he urged caution. He reminded physicians that the rays were new, their nature not fully known. Yet, in the rush of healing, many pressed forward with enthusiasm. Patients, though sometimes unsettled, accepted the strange glow with gratitude. For them, the images meant less pain, fewer risks, and answers where once there had been only guesswork. In Vienna, a boy with a broken arm became one of the first patients examined. His fracture, hidden beneath swollen flesh, appeared clearly on the plate. Surgeons guided by the image were able to treat him more gently. The story spread quickly, stirring hope. From that day forward, the rays were welcomed as a quiet revolution in medicine. Reports flowed outward, each one carrying a new example. A bullet in the chest, a needle swallowed, a fracture once missed. All were revealed by the rays. These accounts filled journals and newspapers, sparking both awe and relief. For physicians, it felt as though a window had been opened into the body, a gift that forever changed their work. The pace of adoption was astonishing. Within months, Hospitals across Europe and America had begun installing the equipment. Though fragile and cumbersome, the tubes and screens were seen as worth the effort. Patients lined up, doctors hurried to learn, and the once quiet discovery became part of daily healing. The rays had stepped fully into the world. Through it all, Wilhelm remained modest. He read of these stories with quiet pride, yet never claimed them as his own triumph. To him, the rays were not a possession, but a gift of nature. He had revealed them, nothing more. Their use now belonged to all who sought healing, carried gently into the wide embrace of humanity. Doctors quickly saw the rays as tools of mercy. Broken bones that once required painful probing were now visible at a glance. Surgeons could trace fractures before lifting a scalpel. The rays reduced guesswork, replacing it with certainty. To patients, this was not abstract science, but relief, a promise that their suffering might be eased with less pain. In crowded wards, physicians gathered around plates as they developed. Slowly, pale shadows emerged, revealing bones, bullets, or swallowed objects. Each image carried an air of wonder, as though the body itself had spoken. Patients, too, stared in amazement. Some shivered at seeing their skeletons, yet most welcomed the rays as quiet helpers guiding doctors' hands. In one hospital, a soldier wounded in the chest lay waiting. Surgeons once would have searched blindly, cutting deeply in hope of finding the bullet. With the new rays, the foreign object appeared at once upon the plate. Guided by the image, the surgeons worked swiftly and safely. For the soldier, healing came with less risk, and with it, hope. Children, too, became part of these early stories. A small boy who had swallowed a pin was spared exploration when the rays revealed its exact resting place. Mothers who feared the worst wept with relief. These quiet victories, repeated across hospitals, made the rays beloved by those who once dreaded surgery. They carried comfort into rooms of pain. The plates were not only for emergencies. Physicians began using them to study joints, teeth, and lungs. Hidden structures, long imagined but never seen, were now revealed in delicate shadows. The rays became teachers as well as healers, showing students the hidden lessons of anatomy without the need for dissection. A new chapter in medicine had begun. Even so, the equipment was fragile. Tubes cracked, wires failed, exposures required patience. Hospitals improvised, setting up dark rooms and trays in cramped corners. Yet the effort was always rewarded. Each successful plate felt like a small miracle, turning doubt into certainty. Doctors accepted the inconvenience gladly, for the rays gave more than they demanded. Patients sometimes reacted with unease. To see bones exposed while flesh appeared to vanish felt strange, almost ghostly. Some spoke of the images as eerie, even frightening. Yet others found them comforting, proof that their pain was understood. Wilhelm followed these stories from afar, recognizing both reactions as natural before something so new. As adoption spread, the rays began saving lives. In battlefield hospitals, in crowded city wards, in small clinics, they revealed truths otherwise hidden. A fracture set properly, a bullet removed safely, an illness diagnosed earlier. Each case was a victory. The rays brought vision where there had been blindness, and with vision came healing. Wilhelm did not boast of these successes. He spoke only of the science, leaving the stories of healing to the doctors. Yet in quiet moments he allowed himself a gentle pride. His discovery had found purpose beyond the laboratory. It was not glory that mattered, but the knowledge that human suffering was eased by a faint glow in the dark. Thus, medicine embraced the rays fully. They became instruments of care, guiding hands and opening new paths for healing. What began as shadows in a small laboratory had become a light in hospitals across the world. Patients found hope, physicians found clarity, and Wilhelm's patience bore fruit in the lives of countless strangers he would never meet. Armies soon recognized the ray's potential. On the battlefield, where bullets and shrapnel tore into soldiers, surgeons faced the cruel task of searching blindly through wounds. With the new rays, fragments could be located before the knife touched flesh. The promise was clear: less suffering, quicker healing, and a chance to return soldiers safely to their families. Field hospitals experimented with the fragile equipment. Tubes and screens were packed into wooden crates, carried across rough terrain, and set up under tents. Conditions were far from ideal, yet the rays still revealed what surgeons needed. Even faint images of bullets brought relief, guiding hands in places where every moment was precious. The equipment, though heavy and delicate, was adapted for military wagons. Generators powered the tubes, and assistants hurried to darkened tents for development. Though exposures took time, the results justified the effort. For the first time in war, doctors could see within the body before cutting, reducing pain and loss. The rays offered calm amid chaos. Stories spread of soldiers saved by this quiet light. A bullet near the spine located with precision. Shrapnel traced without needless exploration. Each success built faith in the rays. To those on the battlefield, they were not abstractions of science, but lifelines. Fragile machines carrying the hope of survival through smoke and fear. Wilhelm read these reports with mixed feelings. He had never sought military use for his discovery. He preferred to think of hospitals, healing, and quiet classrooms. Yet he could not deny that the rays eased suffering, even in war. Though uneasy, he accepted that knowledge, once shared, finds its own paths beyond the will of its discoverer. In Paris, doctors organized mobile units that carried the rays directly to soldiers at the front. These early machines, though unreliable, saved countless lives. They were celebrated as wonders of modern science, bridging the distance between battlefield and hospital. Wilhelm, ever humble, gave no speeches, but quietly continued his work as the world embraced what he had revealed. The military applications grew steadily. Commanders praised the rays for their practicality, surgeons for their accuracy, yet for Wilhelm such praise carried little joy. He valued the easing of suffering, but war itself saddened him. He believed that science should serve peace, and though he did not refuse the use, he never celebrated it as triumph. Still, he continued to refine the understanding of the rays, ensuring that those who used them would have the clearest knowledge possible. His focus was always on truth. If the rays were to enter battlefields, he could at least ensure they were applied with care, guided by accuracy rather than haste. Knowledge, he believed, was its own safeguard. Letters from military doctors confirmed the value of the rays. They described soldiers saved, wounds treated with new precision, and families spared grief. Wilhelm read them quietly, setting them aside without display. The discovery had gone far beyond his small laboratory. It now served in tents and trenches, carried wherever suffering demanded light. Through it all, Wilhelm's nature did not change. He remained the same quiet professor, walking his university halls with calm steps. The world may have claimed his rays for hospitals and battlefields alike, but he still saw himself only as their discoverer. His task was not glory, but patience, and the truth remained his only pursuit. While scientists and doctors explored the rays with care, the public embraced them with fascination. Newspapers printed vivid headlines of invisible light that could pierce flesh and wood. Illustrations showed skeletons in hats and coats, amusing and unsettling readers. The discovery had escaped the laboratory and entered the imagination of everyday life. Cartoonists found endless inspiration. Drawings of couples at dances revealed skeletons beneath gowns and suits. Shopkeepers joked that X-rays might expose hidden flaws in their wares. Humor mixed with unease, for people wondered if privacy itself was at risk. Could these rays see through walls, through clothes, through secrets? The questions stirred curiosity and fear alike. Postcards were sold across Europe featuring fanciful X-ray scenes. Lovers pictured as skeletons, businessmen shown with hidden coins in their pockets, even animals rendered in bones. These images, though playful, revealed how deeply the discovery had captured attention. What began as patient science had become part of popular culture almost overnight. Some entrepreneurs claimed they could use X-rays for fortune-telling or medical cures beyond reason. Advertisements promised wonders that science had never offered. Wilhelm shook his head at such exaggerations. He valued truth, not spectacle, and knew that such claims distorted the careful patience with which the rays had first been revealed. Still, public fascination had its benefits. More students enrolled in physics, more doctors pressed for machines, more interest flowed into the sciences. The rays, though sometimes misunderstood, had opened doors in the minds of many. Curiosity stirred across the world, and though not always accurate, it carried the spirit of wonder that Wilhelm himself had felt. In drawing rooms and parlors, people whispered of hidden dangers. Some feared the rays might expose their private letters or reveal their thoughts. Stories spread faster than facts, shaping the rays into something more than they were. Wilhelm remained calm in the face of these tales, answering with steady explanations, returning imagination to truth. Writers of fiction soon joined the chorus. Novels and short stories hinted at strange powers of invisible light, blending science with fantasy. Characters gained the ability to see through walls or uncover secrets with ease. The line between discovery and myth blurred, reflecting both awe and unease at a world where the unseen had become visible. In cities, theaters sometimes staged demonstrations. Audiences gasped as shadows of bones or coins appeared on screens. The rays became spectacle as well as science, a curious attraction for those eager to glimpse the invisible. Wilhelm never attended such events. To him, the rays were tools of knowledge, not entertainment. Yet he understood their appeal. Amid the noise of exaggeration, Wilhelm's quiet voice was steady. He reminded others that the rays were neither miracle nor menace, but part of nature. They revealed, but they did not invent. They offered vision, but not omniscience. His calm words often seemed small against the roar of public imagination, yet in their simplicity lay lasting truth. So the rays lived two lives. In laboratories and hospitals, they served patiently, guiding hands and saving lives. In streets and newspapers, they danced as skeletons, jokes and curiosities. Both were reflections of human nature, one serious, the other playful. Wilhelm accepted this with humility, knowing that discovery, once shared, always takes on many forms. As fascination spread, Wilhelm often felt like a quiet figure in the background of his own discovery. Others lectured, published, and entertained with the rays. But he remained steady in Würzburg, guiding students and refining his notes. Fame swirled around him, yet he lived much as before, anchored by his modest nature. He received invitations from universities and societies eager to honor him. Many expected him to revel in the attention. Instead, he spoke simply, offering calm explanations and little more. His words were few, his gestures restrained. To those who met him, the contrast was striking. The man who revealed the unseen was himself almost invisible in manner. Visitors to his laboratory sometimes left disappointed. They expected drama, yet found only order, quiet apparatus, and a professor moving methodically among his instruments. Wilhelm never performed for spectacle. He demonstrated patiently, letting the rays themselves reveal their power. The glow of the screen and the images on plates spoke far louder than he ever did. Despite his humility, honors arrived. Societies elected him as a member, universities offered tributes, newspapers celebrated his name. Yet Wilhelm rarely displayed these tokens. He accepted them with gratitude, then returned to his work. He valued the discovery not for what it brought him, but for what it offered the world. The rays continued to spread into every corner of medicine and science. Hospitals adopted them widely, armies carried them to the field, and the public still marveled at their ghostly beauty. In every place they traveled, the shadow of Wilhelm's patience lingered. His quiet hand had opened the door, and now the world had walked through. At home, life remained simple. Bertha kept their household steady, shielding him from excess attention. Evenings were often spent quietly, with books or walks, as though the world had not changed. For Wilhelm, the balance between discovery and ordinary life was essential. The rays might belong to history, but his heart remained rooted in stillness. He often reflected on the path that had led him here. The struggles of youth, the years of quiet teaching, the patient nights of repetition all had prepared him for the moment the screen first glowed. The rays were not chance alone, but the fruit of a life shaped by persistence. In their light he saw the quiet worth of his journey. As the 20th century began, the discovery was no longer new. It had become established, taught in schools, applied in hospitals, and trusted by patients. For Wilhelm, this was the greatest reward. To see the rays embraced not as novelty but as knowledge gave him peace. They had become part of human understanding, woven into daily life. Though newspapers sometimes exaggerated or joked, Wilhelm trusted that truth would endure. Public fascination might fade or shift, but the rays themselves remained steady, answering with the same calm glow. Their power did not depend on rumor or fashion. It lived in nature itself, waiting quietly for those with patience to see. So the world had answered his discovery with wonder, fear, humor, and gratitude. The rays had slipped from one small laboratory into every corner of life, carrying hope and imagination. Wilhelm, ever modest, stood apart from the clamor. For him, the gift of discovery was enough. Ahead lay honors he never sought, and a legacy that would outlast him. In 1901, the Nobel Prizes were awarded for the first time. The world paused to honor those who had advanced science, literature, and peace. In physics, the choice was clear. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, discoverer of the mysterious new rays, was named the very first laureate. It was recognition not only of discovery, but of the patience and humility behind it. The announcement spread quickly. Across Europe, scholars nodded in agreement. Few questioned the decision, for Wilhelm's discovery had already changed medicine and science in ways too great to ignore. Hospitals, universities, and laboratories everywhere had embraced the rays. Now the man who had revealed them was lifted quietly into history. Wilhelm himself received the honor with calm reserve. He did not rush to Stockholm in triumph, nor seek praise. He accepted with gratitude, but without boast. To him, the award was not a crown, but a duty fulfilled. He had revealed what nature had hidden, and the recognition was simply a reminder of the responsibility he had carried. At the Nobel ceremony, grand halls glowed with chandeliers, and voices echoed with celebration. Dignitaries applauded, scientists delivered speeches, and music filled the air. In the midst of the grandeur, Wilhelm remained modest, bowing politely, speaking briefly. His words were measured, his tone steady, as though the prize belonged more to the rays than to himself. Observers expected flourish, yet found humility. Wilhelm spoke simply of discovery, of patience, of the quiet joy of observing nature's truth. He did not claim brilliance, nor genius, only persistence. To those who listened, his calm presence carried more weight than any grand oration. The dignity of restraint became his greatest statement. He accepted the medal and diploma, symbols of achievement, yet kept them with little display. Honors, he felt, were less important than the work itself. In private, he placed them quietly among his papers, where they rested beside notebooks filled with sketches of shadows and rays. To Wilhelm, both held equal value as records of truth. The Nobel Prize carried with it a monetary reward. For many, it would have been a chance for wealth or comfort. Wilhelm, however, treated it with the same humility as all else. He used it wisely, never extravagantly, and turned much of it to support his work and responsibilities. To him, discovery was service, not fortune. In later years, people would look back and remember that the first Nobel Prize in physics had gone to Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen. The tradition of honoring great scientists began with his name, yet he himself never spoke of it with pride. For him, the true honor was that the rays were being used to heal, to teach, and to reveal. The ceremony ended, the applause faded, and Wilhelm returned to his quiet life. He resumed teaching, walking university halls as though little had changed. Students still saw the same serious professor, patient and steady. Fame had touched his name, but it did not alter his nature. He remained as he had always been, humble and calm. The Nobel Prize was the world's loudest recognition, yet Wilhelm's life continued in silence. The rays he had discovered had spread far beyond him, entering hospitals, battlefields, and imaginations everywhere. For Wilhelm, the greatest prize was not the medal in Stockholm, but the knowledge that his patience had given light to others. After the Nobel Prize, Many urged Wilhelm to secure his place through patents. He could have claimed rights to the equipment and techniques, earning wealth beyond measure, yet he refused. To him, the rays were not an invention, but a discovery. One could not own what nature had always held, waiting quietly for human eyes to notice. He explained simply that discoveries belonged to everyone. To place barriers upon them would betray the spirit of science. The rays had revealed themselves for the benefit of all humanity, not to line the pockets of one man. His refusal puzzled some, but for Wilhelm the choice was as natural as the patience that guided his work. Had he chosen otherwise, Wilhelm might have become one of the wealthiest scientists of his time. Hospitals, armies, and universities all depended upon the rays. Yet he lived simply, without luxury. His home remained modest, his habits unchanged. Bertha continued to manage their household as she always had, grounded in quiet routines and humble comforts. When colleagues asked why he turned away such fortune, Wilhelm answered calmly that knowledge was not property. It was light, meant to be shared freely. He had no desire to bind the rays with legal claims or profit. In this, his humility shone brighter than any wealth. The world gained a treasure because he chose generosity. Some criticized his decision, saying that wealth could have funded more laboratories or supported further research. Wilhelm acknowledged this, but gently replied that others could provide funds. His role was different. His duty was to guard the truth with honesty, to pass it forward unbound. To him, freedom was the purest form of service. This refusal became one of his defining acts. It showed that discovery could be guided by principle as well as ambition. In a time when patents shaped fortunes, Wilhelm's choice set him apart. He valued the rays for what they revealed, not what they could earn. His gift was not measured in coins, but in clarity. The world noticed. Physicians praised him, governments respected him, and students admired him. Though many could not imagine turning away such wealth, they saw in Wilhelm a rare example of selflessness. His decision ensured that the rays spread quickly, unhindered by barriers, reaching hospitals and laboratories everywhere. Humanity benefited because one man chose simplicity. Wilhelm himself thought little of it. To him, the matter was closed. He continued his teaching, his research, and his walks, leaving the debate behind. The rays flowed outward freely, becoming tools of healing and discovery across the globe. He had no need to claim ownership. The truth itself was enough. Bertha supported his choice without hesitation. She valued their quiet life more than wealth. Their happiness lay not in riches, but in companionship and purpose. She reminded Wilhelm that their strength had always come from patience and humility. Together they carried on as they always had, even as the world attached his name to greatness. In time, his refusal to patent became almost as famous as the discovery itself. It was remembered as a symbol of principle, of knowledge given freely. Wilhelm did not speak of it often, but when he did, his words were simple. Science is for all. In those quiet words lay a legacy of generosity that still endures. As the years passed, Wilhelm slowly stepped back from the front lines of teaching. Younger professors took on the heavy schedules of lectures, while he devoted more time to reflection and quiet research. His fame had grown, yet he remained a man of modest habits, preferring the stillness of his study to the bustle of public life. He and Bertha lived simply in their home, surrounded by books, letters, and memories of a shared journey. Evenings were gentle affairs, quiet meals, soft conversations, and walks under the fading light. Fame and fortune mattered little. For Wilhelm, the true richness lay in the peace of companionship, the comfort of routine, and the dignity of quiet work. Though retired from daily teaching, he never lost curiosity. He continued to read widely, following developments in physics and medicine. Colleagues sent him papers, and he answered with thoughtful notes. His presence was no longer at the center of discovery, yet his influence remained steady, woven quietly into the growing tapestry of science. Visitors who came to see him were struck by his modest surroundings. There were no displays of wealth, no lavish trophies of recognition. His home was plain, his study lined with orderly shelves. The Nobel medal rested quietly among papers almost hidden. To Wilhelm, the truest honor was in the rays themselves, still serving humanity each day. The world outside changed quickly. New technologies, new machines, and new wars rose and fell. Yet within Wilhelm's life, the rhythm remained calm. He did not seek to follow every turn of progress. Instead, he treasured what time gave him, the companionship of Bertha, the quiet of walks, and the steady beat of a life lived with purpose. He grew older with dignity. His hair turned white, his steps slowed, but his mind remained clear. Students who once sat in his lectures became professors themselves, carrying forward the spirit of his patience. Wilhelm, though no longer active in classrooms, felt content knowing that the discipline of careful observation had taken root in others. In the year 1919, Bertha passed away. Her absence left Wilhelm with a grief he bore in silence. For decades, she had been his anchor, his companion in quiet strength. Without her, his days grew lonelier, though he spoke little of it. He honored her memory in the same way he lived, with steadiness, humility, and quiet devotion. After Bertha's death, Wilhelm withdrew further from public life. He lived alone in Munich, keeping two simple routines. Visitors found him gentle but reserved, a man shaped by loss, yet not overcome by it. He continued to read, to reflect, and to walk, though each step carried the weight of solitude. Letters from colleagues still reached him, and he answered faithfully. His responses were thoughtful, though brief, always polite. Even in grief, he carried the same steadiness that had marked his youth. The rays he had discovered continued their work in hospitals and laboratories, a quiet reminder of his enduring contribution to the world. Though the world honored him as a great figure of science, Wilhelm lived his later years as he had always lived, with modesty. His possessions were few, his desires simple. He sought no monuments, no statues, no grand legacy. For him it was enough to know that the rays still shone, guiding hands, easing suffering, and revealing the unseen. In the quiet years after Bertha's passing, Wilhelm's life grew smaller in outward shape, but deeper in reflection. He no longer lectured, no longer oversaw laboratories filled with students. Instead, he lived among his books, his memories, and the steady rhythm of simple days. Though alone, he carried himself with the same calm dignity as always. He walked the streets of Munich slowly, a familiar figure to neighbors. Some recognized the great scientist, others only saw an elderly man with steady steps. Wilhelm preferred it that way. Fame never suited him. He valued being left to his thoughts, observing the world in silence, as he had done since boyhood. The war years darkened Europe, and Wilhelm witnessed turmoil he could not change. He read of destruction and loss, saddened by how often knowledge was bent toward conflict. Yet he remained firm in his belief that science's truest calling was to heal and to serve. The rays, in their quiet way, continued to embody that hope. Visitors who came to see him found his home plain but ordered. A desk lined with papers, a shelf of journals, and a chair by the window where he often read. There were no grand portraits, no polished trophies, only the steady presence of a man who had lived by humility, content to let his work, not his possessions, speak. Colleagues wrote, seeking advice or sending thanks. Wilhelm replied kindly, though briefly, his letters marked by precision and restraint. He had never been a man of many words. Instead, he conveyed care in simplicity. Each reply carried the quiet wisdom of one who knew that clarity mattered more than flourish. He often thought of Bertha, the partner who had shared his path. Their life together had been modest but full of meaning. Now, in solitude, he found comfort in memories, in the knowledge that she had supported him faithfully, and in the rays themselves, which remained her unseen legacy as much as his. Wilhelm aged with grace. His hair whitened fully, his posture stooped, but his gaze retained its clarity. Neighbors recalled his politeness, his kindness in small gestures. He was never harsh, never boastful, always measured. Even in old age, the habits that had defined him since youth, patience, humility, and steadiness, remained unchanged. The world around him changed swiftly. Automobiles filled streets, radios carried voices through the air, and hospitals used X-rays as part of daily medicine. Wilhelm saw these changes with quiet wonder. He felt no envy at progress moving beyond him. It was enough to know that what he had begun now lived in countless hands. In his final years, Wilhelm rarely spoke of discovery. When asked, he would answer plainly, without embellishment. To him, the rays were not a monument to his name, but a gift entrusted for a time. He had revealed them, nothing more. The true measure of his life was that others now carried the work forward. Thus his later days unfolded in stillness. He lived without display, without pursuit of wealth or honor, content in the knowledge that his patience had served the world. The man who had once traced shadows in a small laboratory now sat quietly by his window, watching the light change with the hours, his heart steady to the end. Those who knew Wilhelm best described him as serious, kind, and utterly without vanity. He dressed plainly, spoke modestly, and carried himself without the airs of fame. He never sought to impress, only to work with honesty. His greatness lay not in ambition, but in restraint. He lived as though discovery itself were the only honor worth keeping. Students remembered him with gratitude. He was not a dazzling lecturer, yet his fairness and patience left lasting marks. He treated every question with respect, never belittling those who struggled. Many later recalled that his kindness gave them courage to continue. His influence endured not only in rays of light, but in the lives of those he guided. Colleagues respected his consistency. He was never swept away by trends or ego. Even in the glow of discovery, he remained grounded. Some admired his brilliance, but most admired his steadiness. In a world where science often celebrated speed, Wilhelm stood as a reminder that patience could uncover truths others overlooked. His possessions were few, his rooms plain. He cared little for luxury, filling his home instead with books, letters, and memories. Visitors found no gallery of prizes, only a simple desk, shelves of journals, and the quiet order of a man who lived by principle. His life was testimony that greatness required no ornament. Though the world celebrated his name, Wilhelm was never swept up in grandeur. Honors collected dust, while his notebooks remained close at hand. He valued the quiet record of observation more than any medal. To him, truth lay not in applause, but in the faint glow of a screen, the steady shadow upon a plate. Those who visited in his later years left with impressions of gentleness. He listened more than he spoke, answered thoughtfully, and never boasted of his role. If asked about the rays, he explained simply, as if recounting a fact rather than an achievement. His humility, more than his discovery, defined how people remembered him. Even as fame spread far beyond his modest home, Wilhelm avoided attention. He disliked photographs, seldom gave interviews, and preferred silence to spectacle. This quiet nature made him mysterious to the public, yet beloved by those close to him. He remained what he had always been, a patient observer of the world, content in shadows. His character shone brightest in his refusal to claim ownership. The decision not to patent the rays remained a symbol of selflessness, often retold by admirers. It captured the essence of Wilhelm, a man who valued service above gain. Generosity, humility, and honesty shaped his life as firmly as science shaped his work. Though his fame endured, Wilhelm seemed untouched by it. He lived simply, walked quietly, and thought deeply. For him, the rays were not a monument to his own name, but a legacy to humanity. He never forgot that discovery was not conquest, but service, a principle that guided him to the very end of his days. Thus his reputation became more than scientific. He was remembered not only as the man who revealed X-rays, but as one who embodied humility. His life reminded others that greatness can be gentle, that true strength lies in patience, and that even the most extraordinary discoveries may be carried by the quietest of men. The discovery of X-rays reshaped medicine forever. What once required painful exploration could now be seen in shadows of bone and metal. Doctors healed with greater precision, patients suffered less, and the hidden body was revealed without harm. In hospitals across the world, Wilhelm's quiet patience continued to guide hands long after he set his pen down. Science, too, was transformed. The rays opened the door to new questions about energy, light, and matter. They inspired others to search for forces beyond such radiation, particles, invisible patterns woven into nature. Wilhelm had uncovered not only a tool, but a path. From his careful notes, whole new fields of study grew and flourished. Generations of students learned his name as the first Nobel laureate in physics. To them, he became a symbol of discovery, a reminder that patience could lead to greatness. Yet in the quiet corners of history, his character shone just as brightly. He was remembered as the scientist who gave freely, expecting nothing in return. Hospitals filled with images that bore his influence. Each plate, each screen, carried the echo of his laboratory in Würzburg. A fracture seen clearly, a bullet traced, a hidden illness revealed, each was part of his legacy. Though Wilhelm was no longer there to guide the work, his rays remained, serving humanity in silence. In his final years, and after his death in 1923, tributes poured in. Scientists praised his rigor, physicians his service, and the public his generosity. Yet all agreed that his humility was as remarkable as his discovery. He had given the world a light, and in giving it freely he had left a lesson greater than the rays themselves. History remembered him as a man of restraint, one who lived without show but gave the world a gift of immeasurable worth. His discovery illuminated bones and machines, but his life illuminated the value of patience, honesty, and simplicity. In Wilhelm's quiet example, the world saw that greatness could be humble. The rays themselves outlived him, woven into every hospital, every medical school, every place where hidden injuries needed clarity. They became so common that people forgot the wonder they once inspired. Yet behind every image lay the memory of a quiet professor watching a faint screen glow in the dark. Wilhelm never sought immortality, but his work ensured it. His name traveled farther than he ever did, spoken in classrooms, hospitals, and laboratories. Children studied him, doctors relied on him, and scientists followed paths he had opened. In this way, his life became part of humanity's shared inheritance. The man who had lived so modestly had left a legacy, vast and enduring. He had shown that truth is revealed not by brilliance alone, but by patience. He had shown that discoveries serve best when given freely. He had shown that even the quietest of lives can change the course of the world. And so, Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen's story rests in the stillness of history. His rays continue to glow, not in his laboratory, but in every hospital where healing begins. His humility continues to teach, reminding us that greatness often walks in silence. In the glow of X-rays, the world still feels the gentle hand of the man who first saw them.